Give the current Daf Yomi Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Aleph. Begin 10 lines down the top of the Yomim. We continue the discussion on the previous Daf, which opened up this parak, what's called the Rebbe de Mila, which we had a huge machlekes between the Chachamim and Rebbe Eliezer. We know that Mila is Deich Shabbos. There's a bris Mila. People go to Mila on Shabbos. However, there was a machlekes regarding if Machshir Mila is Deich Shabbos. Our Gemara continues on that theme regarding the preparatory acts regarding that overriding Shabbos. Shes Kozpans Bekazach Necheskel. Very geschmack, still have the fish cat over here in the Naya Shir, Baruch Hashem. To any time, Daf Achaim. Somebody is going to speak on today's Daf are Machshir Mitzvah. Like I said, these are not the actual mitzvah itself, it's the preparatory acts of the mitzvah as that relates to Shabbos. Also, Oimer, that's the first, from the new crop, that's the barley carbon, that's Matra Chodesh that permits the new grain to be eaten outside Beis HaMikdash. Then the Shtei HaLechem, the Eimer is brought on the second day of Pesach. Shtei HaLechem is brought on Shavuos. These are two challah rolls that are brought as a carbon in the Beis HaMikdash. They permit Chodesh in the Beis HaMikdash. The new grain cannot be brought in the Beis HaMikdash until Shavuos, when the Shtei HaLechem is brought. Gzeira Shaveh is something when you have the same word in two different contexts that would compare the halachas. Then there's Mufna Mishnei Tzadin and Mufna Mitzad Echad. Mufna Mishnei Tzadin is that when the word in the Gzeira Shaveh, both sides they're extra, so we could darshan. And then there's Mufna Mitzad Echad when only one of the words are extra, but the other one is not. The other one you need. The question is regarding the levels of difficulty in the Gzeira Shaveh as it relates to if you have both words extra, only one word extra. Tkiyah Sheifer and Redias Hapas, blowing the shofar and taking bread out of an oven, that's what's called Chachma Ve'ena Malacha. It's not a Malacha per se, it's not something that's biblically forbidden, it's just something of Chachma, and therefore it's something that would be forbidden as Ubda D'Chayil. It would only be forbidden because of a weekday activity, but biblically it would be Muta D'Iraisa, and that's going to come with the Gemara's discussion. We begin the current Daf, like we said, Kuf Lamed Aleph, 10 lines down at the top of the Yamin. We're in the middle of a discussion for the Mishnah, like we said. Rebbe Eliezer had said that, Machshir Mila Deich Shabbos, you could even chop wood to make the coals, to make iron, to make the knife, to do the bris Mila on Shabbos. All those you could do. However, on that the Gemara says the following statement. It says, Loila Koil, says not for every hechsher mitzvah, Rebbe Eliezer say, Machshir Mitzvah Deich Shabbos, that the preparatory acts override the Shabbos. The Gemara later on is going to explain which of the Machshir Mitzvah are we coming to exclude. But that's just what he's putting out there. Reb Chia Barab is putting out there that don't think that every Hechsher Mitzvah, that if you have a certain Mitzvah that's Deich Shabbos, don't think that every Hechsher Mitzvah he said is the same thing as Mila. Although in the Mishnah he said that by Bris Mila, not only could you do the Mila on Shabbos, but even Hechsher Mitzvah, not every Mitzvah. And he says, I'll prove it to you. How do I know this? He says, Shari Shtei HaLechem, because you have on Shavuos the Shtei HaLechem, the two breads that are Chayvus HaYimim. They're obligated to be brought on Shabbos. You can't push it off till the next day. So it's similar to Mila. It has to be done on the 8th day, and it can be done even on Shabbos. Yet Rabbi Eliezer did not learn that the baking, which is the preparatory act, that overrides Shabbos, Elam Gzeira Shaveh. He had to learn that from Gzeira Shaveh. Now, if you would think to say that every hechsher mitzvah, every preparatory act, meaning it's not the mitzvah itself, but something that's preparing for it, the primary mitzvah that's on Shabbos, you're going to say that the machshim are the same thing, so what do you need a Gzeira Shaveh for? Every hechsher mitzvah is Deich Shabbos. From the fact that you need a Gzeira Shaveh shows that obviously you don't presume that to be the case that the hechsher mitzvah is going to be Deich Shabbos. So obviously it's not every hechsher mitzvah, but it's every hechsher mitzvah. Wouldn't need a special Gzeira Shaveh. And where do you see that you need a special Gzeira Shaveh for the Shtei HaLechem? In the time of Rebbe Brisa, this is Rebbe Eliezer. Rebbe Eliezer, he says, Minayin leMachshir Shtei HaLechem. From where do you know that the preparatory acts of the Shtei HaLechem should Deich Shabbos? Like baking it. Baking is not, you don't have to do that on Shavuos, you could have done it every Shavuos. How do we know that the baking, even though it's not the mitzvah itself of being makriv the Shtei HaLechem, that's overriding Shabbos? Because Nemra Hava Ba'omer. It says in the Pasuk in Vayikra, it says that tell the Jewish people they have Veisim as Omer. They should bring the barley offering, which is Reishis Kitzirchem LaKoyin, the first of your harvest to the Koyin. So it says the word Hava by the Omer. The Nemra Hava b'Shtei HaLechem, this is what's called the Gzeira Shaveh. It says the word Hava by the Shtei HaLechem, where it says, the Pasuk goes to Vayikra, Mimashazechem Taviu Lechem Tenufa Shtayim, should bring from your places 2 breads as the carbon of Shtei HaLechem. So we make the following Gzeira Shaveh. Ma Hava ha'amor ba'omer, just like when it says bringing by the Omer. Machshirin, the preparatory acts, which are, as you see in the picture over here, the reaping, the grinding, the sifting, all those things are Deich Shabbos, the override the Shabbos. The Gemara says, Menachas Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. It says, B'char Shubakatzer Tishbeis. It says you should rest from plowing and from reaping. Why specifically those two things? Now do all malachas on Shabbos. So the Gemara Menachos says, just like plowing is always something of elective, it's always voluntary, meaning you never have a mitzvah to do plowing. So too, when we're telling you now do katsira, reaping on Shabbos, the harvesting, it's referring to something that's rishus, that's you're choosing to do. That excludes katsira sa'imer, which is a mitzvah. There's a mitzvah to do the katsira, the reaping. That's something that can be done on Shabbos. It overrides Shabbos, even though it's not the actual bringing of the omer. Even the harvesting is overriding Shabbos. And there it says the word hava. So also af hava, more b'shtei alechem. So to by the shtei alechem. Again, the omer is brought on Pesach. So to the shtei alechem, that's brought on Shavuos. That there it also says hava. The Gzeira Shabbat tells us machshirin deichen Shabbos. That the machshirin, the preparatory acts of the shtei alechem, that's like baking it, is also going to override Shabbos. So again, this is just the proof that he showed, that you see that it's not automatic that every hechsher mitzvah, Rabbi Eliezer holds, is deichen Shabbos. Because if that would be the case, you wouldn't need a special Gzeira Shabbat to tell you that the shtei alechem overrides it. And so how do you know it? You know it from a Gzeira Shabbat. The Gemara just points out, however, that mufni, you have to say that the word hava, the word vavesim, has to be extra, has to be superfluous. Why? Because the ilay mufni, if it's not extra, ikla mifrach, you could ask on the Gzeira Shabbat, and you could say, wait a second, ma la omer, what you find is stringency by the omer. You're trying to learn a shtei alechem from the omer, that the machshirin on deicha Shabbos. Wait a second, how could you learn that from omer? Omer is a stringency shekei nematzah katzer. If you find already harvested barley, that was not cut for the mitzvah of the omer. Kaitzer, there's a mitzvah to go again and harvest it for what's called the shema, for its sake. Because the pasuk says, ukitzartem behevesim. You should harvest it and you should bring it. So the reaping itself is a mitzvah, it's part of the mitzvah. So, Taimah b'shtei alechem, how are you going to compare it to the shtei alechem? Shematzah katzer, if you already find harvested wheat, in a kaitzer, you don't have to go ahead and harvest specifically this wheat for the shtei alechem. It doesn't say anywhere in the mitzvah shtei alechem kitzira. So how are you going to learn that from one from the other? Omer has a certain stringency, it has a special mitzvah of kitzira. Maybe over there, the machshir mitzvah deicha, because it's part of the mitzvah. It's not even hechsher, it's really part of the mitzvah. How are you going to compare it to shtei alechem to say that it's going to have the same halacha? Says the Gemara, lo'i, you're right. In truth, afnui mufni. The word hava by the omer is extra, and then we're clearing it out from the Gzeira Shabbat, even though it has a stringency. Because it says mechti, let's see. It says in the pasuk v'habesim es omer, bring the omer, reishis kitzirchem, the first of your harvest, el hakoyin to the koyin. Fine. So from there I already know what to do. But yom havayachem lomali, why does it say on the day that you bring it? I already said you're bringing it. What's on the day that you're bringing it? Shema min alafnuya. Obviously the word havayachem is extra to tell you that you can learn at the Gzeira Shabbat of shtei alechem v'mayna. But says the Gemara, no, it's still not 100% understood. It's still only superfluous on one side, only on the side of the omer. And by that of when it says by the shtei alechem, it's not extra, it's telling you to bring it. By omer it says two times the word is hava, so one of them is extra. But by shtei alechem it's not extra. Now what's the difference if it's what's called mufn mitzad echad or mufn mishnei tzadim? B'shamina Rabbi Eliezer da'ama, we learned Rabbi Eliezer, who we're discussing over here, that he says that the Gzeira Shabbat that's not extra on both sides, rather it's only mufn mitzad echad, it's only superfluous on one side of the Gzeira Shabbat. L'meidin, you could learn out from it if there's no difficulty, there's no refutation. But if there's what to respond, umeshivin, then you respond. Rashi brings the source of this, is Gemara in Yevamis in Parak Mix Chalitza, that it says regarding Chalitza. If you do Chalitza with the left shoe, the left foot, it's going to be invalid. I believe it says it's going to be kosher. The Gemara says why? Because he doesn't learn out of Gzeira Shabbat, regel from Mitzayra. How do you know it has to be on the right foot that Chalitza is done? Because it says regel, the foot, by Mitzayra, and it says regel by the Yavam. Now, the Gemara Rabbi Eliezer doesn't learn that from Mitzayra, but it says in the Brayis, Rabbi Eliezer says, how do you know that the Ritzia, the Eved Ivri that wants to stay longer, that you bore a hole in his ear, that's with the right ear? Because it says over here Eisen, it says over there by the Mitzayra Eisen. You see the psukim are extra over there by the Mitzayra. So the Gemara says, wait, the Eisen is extra, but regel is not extra. As Rashi explains, what does it mean it's not superfluous? From both sides. You're right. The regel that it says by Chalitza, that you need for itself. But it's open on one side because the Pasha Mitzayra, everyone agrees all those words are extra because it already said by the Pasha the Usher, there's two types of Mitzayra, there's Usher and Ani. Basically what Rashi is just trying to bring from there is that you see that Rabbi Eliezer holds that to have a bona fide Gzeira Shabbat, not to ask and refute it, you need to have both sides extra. So by Chalitza, that wasn't extra on both sides, so therefore he doesn't hold it the Gzeira Shabbat. But by that of Ritzi, it was open on both sides, so he's gonna learn the Gzeira Shabbat. So if that's the case, so you have a refutation over here. You're saying that Omer has a certain stringency that Shtei Alechem doesn't have. That the mitzvah of the Ketzirah, the preparatory acts, is part of the mitzvah itself. So how you're learning out, even though it's extra, the superfluous, it's extra word by the Omer, but it's not extra by Shtei Alechem. So that's Mashivin. You could ask, you could refute. There's a flaw in the Gzera Shabbat. So the Gemara, good question, but there's an answer for that. Teviu is Ribuyuhu. It says by the pasuk, by the Shtei Alechem, it's going on V'hikrafta mincha chadasha. You should bring a new mincha, referring to the Shtei Alechem. It could have said Mimay Shlei Seichem Lechem Tenufa. It already said V'hikraftem. You could have just said the words from your Moshe Seichem, from your settlements. There should be a bread of elevation. Why did it say Teviyu that you should bring it? That is superfluous to tell you that not to ask a refutation on the Gzera Shabbat. We have Teviyu, an extra word. Now we're telling you, you could learn that from Vavesim, from that it says by the Omer. Although it's a good question, it's a Meshiva, but you have a special reboot to tell you not to ask that question. Therefore, that's how we know that the Shtei Alechem, it's Machshirin, are the Shabbos. You could bake the Shtei Alechem on Shabbos itself. So now the Gemara says, okay, wait a second. This that you had said, you gave me a special, we opened up the daf by saying that Lo L'chol Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Not for everything did Rabbi Eliezer say that it's going to be Deiches Shabbos. So L'mutimah, what's it coming to exclude? Which one of halachas that could be done on Shabbos, are you telling me that it's machshirin are not going to be deiches Shabbos? So even in lemute lulav, if you think to say it's coming to exclude that of lulav, but the time the Bryce says that's not like that. The Bryce says clearly lulav b'chol machshir, lulav and all its preparatory acts. For example, to cut it from being attached from the palm tree, that's a Shabbos to Rabbi Eliezer, and we're going to Rabbi Eliezer. What the Gemara was explaining, Rabbi Yechon was saying that Rabbi Eliezer doesn't know every machshir mitzvah is deiches Shabbos. Not everyone. He proved it from Shtei Alechem. So which one are you coming to exclude? Show me which mitzvah you're trying to tell me. You just tell me a rule. It has to be that's an application. So which one is it? Can't be lulav because Rabbi Eliezer clearly says that the hefshem mitzvah of lulav also deiches Shabbos. So what are you going to say? Ve'elimutei sukkah to exclude, let's say, building a sukkah. But for telling you on the Bryce, says sukkah v'am chal machshirah. Even building a sukkah, all these preparatory acts, deiches Shabbos. To Rabbi Eliezer, so it is deiches Shabbos. So ve'elimutei matzah, what are you going to tell me? It's excluding that of, let's say, baking matzah. But we're talking about the Brisa. No, matzah v'chamach matzah and all its preparatory acts. Deiches Shabbos to Rabbi Eliezer. Okay, so ve'elimutei shayfer, we're going to tell me it's going to include, let's say, like making the shayfer, or let's say bring it through Rosh Hashanah. But we're talking about the Brisa. Shayfer v'chamach a shayfer and all its machshirim. Deiches Shabbos to Rabbi Eliezer. So which mitzvah are you telling me Rabbi Eliezer doesn't hold it by every mitzvah? We said it by Milo, not every mitzvah, but which one not? I just brought a whole list of mitzvahs that he holds the machshirim there are Deiches Shabbos. So that the Gemara concludes. Amar Ba'ad Bar Abai says, "L'ma'utei tzitzis litalisa." It's coming to exclude that you shouldn't go ahead and hang on tzitzis on your cloak on Shabbos, as the Gemara is going to explain. U'mezuzah lepischa, not to put on the mezuzah on your doorpost. Says Gemara Tanakh Chutz in the Brisa that those are the cases that he holds the machshirin are not Deiches Shabbos. Because the Brisa says B'Shavin, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Kiva, they agree shem tzayis talisa, that if someone puts on tzitzis on his cloak, and he puts a mezuzah on his doorpost, he's going to be chayiv for the chayiv of Shabbos, for Baina, for Makam Padish, for doing this malach on Shabbos. Says my time. What's the reason? Why over here does he hold the machshir and not Deiches Shabbos? So Rabbi Yisrael says lefisha in kibulem zman, because it doesn't have a set time. You don't have to do it on Shabbos. Why'd you have to do it now? All those other mitzvahs, that's the yom tov, that's the day you have to do it. You don't have to do it now. So therefore, it's not Deiches Shabbos. To which Amalei Abai says adrabah, to the contrary. For the fact that there's no set time to have a mezuzah on your doorpost or to have tzitzis on your garment, as we take to the days, that means every single moment is its time. Because if you have a talis, as long as you're delaying it without tzitzis, you're violating a positive commandment. According to if you hold that what's called tzitzis is chayvus manahu. If you hold that it's an obligation in the cloak, not in the gavra, as a classic machlekes the Gemara brings, is an obligation in the person, what's called the gavra, or in the chetz, in the object, in the talis. If you hold this in the talis, even if it's in your cubby, there's an obligation to put on tzitzis every single moment. You're not supposed to have a full corner garment without tzitzis on it. So therefore, to the contrary, by saying there's no set time, every moment is its time. So why would that be a reason not to be Deiches Shabbos? Yeah, do it right now. You have a mitzvah right now on Shabbos. Why is it different than sukkah and lulav and all those other things? So Elam Rav Nachman, Rav Yitzchak, became some says Rav Hun, Rav Yeshua, he says you're right, a different svara. As Hoyel B'Yodi Lafkiran. Since he's able to be mafkrid, it's not going to be his anymore. And therefore it's not going to be his obligation to put a mezuzah on that doorpost or to put tzitzis on their cloak, because it's not mine. I don't own it. A hefker house doesn't have an obligation of mezuzah. A hefker talis does not have an obligation. It's not like it's like a barbish or it's the owner. Since he could be mafkrid, he doesn't have to do it right now. Therefore, it's not going to be Deiches Shabbos it has like we find like these nigui type of svaras. So therefore, I don't have to do it right now. That's why it's not Deicha Shabbos.
And take it off. It can wear it.
No, so that's he's not wearing it, right? So, but even in the cubby, that's what's saying that he's not gonna do it, right? You're living in the house also, right? So it doesn't have an obligation to do it now on Shabbos. I mean, it's not enough of a svara to be Deicha Shabbos. So the Gemara says we went through a list of different things that we said that the Makshirin are Deicha Shabbos. We were attempting to show that, maybe that's the one. We said no. And the Gemara goes through now, basically to the bottom of the Amid, showing how all those cases, what the sources for Eliezer, and for his disputants who disagree with him and say it's not Deicha Shabbos. Amama. The time of the Brises had brought Lulav v'chol Machshir, the Lulav and all its preparatory acts, are Deicha Nissa Shabbos, they override Shabbos, says to be Eliezer. Says the Gemara, where does he know this from? If he said a blanket statement, he says every hechsher mitzvah is like the mitzvah itself. So that would be the case, but we said it's not. We just proved from Shtei HaLechem that we had to have a special Gzeir Shabbat. And we even said that tzitzis and mezuzah are not included in this heter of machshir mitzvah. That means you have to tell me a special source for every single one to show me that the hechsher mitzvah is going to be Deicha Shabbos too. Where does he know this by? Let's say starting with Lulav. If he's going to learn that from what's called a mamitzinu, which is, just like we find over here, so too will be here, just like B'shtei HaLechem and Oimer, that we say that the hechsher mitzvah is Deicha, so too will be here by Lulav. You can't learn that from there. Shekain tzaref kavaya. Those two things, Oimer Shtei HaLechem, are karbanis. They're needs for Hashem. Over here, it's a mitzvah purpose, but it's not the same thing as kudshim types of things. That's a more elevated type of a status. So maybe over there, it's Deicha Shabbos, hechsher mitzvah, not by Lulav. So Elam HaKareva, the Gemara says, because it says in the pasuk, there's a pasuk in Vayikra that says that ulakachtem lachem by Yom Harishon. You should take for yourself a lulav on the first day by Yom. What does by Yom mean? By Yom afil b'Shabbos. Why does by Yom tell you even on Shabbos? As Rashi explains, it could have just said Barishon. Why is it by Yom Harishon? By Yom Harishon, it doesn't say any day that's the first day of Sukkot. You're going to take the lulav, even if it's on Shabbos. Now, says the Gemara, wait a second. First I have to explain. Ulamai health herself. For what halacha? What do we need to include from even on Shabbos that would come in to tell you it could be done on Shabbos? If you think it means to say to be able to move the lulav, to shake it, because that's what it really sounds like. Well, a kachtim, it's going on to take it. Problem is, itzrich kral lemishli tiltal. You think I need a pasuk to let you move a lulav on Shabbos? Tiltal, just moving a lulav, but when the Torah was given, what we call biblical, moving a lulav was never forbidden. The law of muktzah, of tiltal, was introduced later on by the Rabbanan. So I don't need a pasuk to tell me I could take a lulav on Shabbos. There's no muktzah biblically. So Ela l'machshiv, obviously is talking about what are we coming to include is the hechsher mitzvah, which is an issa da'iraisa to doing of chopping it down from the tree. That would tell you that that's permitted to be done on Shabbos. That you know from Bayay. And says you Rabbanan. Each one of these sources we're going to ask what do the Rabbanan hold. They don't. It's only Rabbi Eliezer holds the hechsher mitzvah deicha. According to Rabbanan, what do they do with this Bayay? Say the Gemara they needed Bayay when it says during the daytime. It means balayla. It just means to say that you can't take the lulav at nighttime. It doesn't mean that any day that is even on Shabbos you could go and chop it off the tree. No, I mean to do it at day and not by nighttime. And says the Rabbi Eliezer, by Yoim Balayla, that it should be done at the daytime and not at nighttime. Another, where does he know that lulav is only taken in the daytime? Nafkele, he learns it out from you should rejoice in front of Hashem your God 7 days. It says Yomim, days, Balayla, it's not nighttime. Now for Rabbanan, they say no. You couldn't learn it out from that pasuk of Shivas Yomim. Why? It was necessary to say by Yom too. Because you would have thought to say Nelif Shivas Yomim Misukah, that you would learn out Gzeir Shava, where it says Shivas Yomim, the same words by Sukkah. Now Malahal and Yomim, just like over there by Sukkah, we know, although it says days, it's about Philalailos, it's even nighttime, as the Gemara says in Sukkah that when we give them an olive, we sit in the Sukkah, we sleep in the Sukkah even at nighttime. So Avkan Yomim Afilalailos, we would have thought the 7 days here also by Lulav is also at nighttime. That's what Rabbanan say. You need a bayom to tell you no during the daytime, day, and not at nighttime. Now, fine. That's the machlokes regarding that of lulav. Now the Gemara says, if that's the case, according to Rabbi Eliezer, the Torah should have written only by lulav that the machshirin are deichit. The neisahanach, we should have learned that the oimer l'shtei lechem v'nilfei minei, and learned it out from that of lulav. Why do you have to write that the hechsher mitzvah is deicha Shabbos by lulav, by oimer shtei lechem? Just write it by lulav. We said you can't learn on lulav from Shtei HaLechem and Oimer because that's something lawyer that elevated says. So write it by lulav, and then you can learn that. Of course, Oimer Shtei HaLechem. If lulav is Deicha Shabbos, for sure Oimer Shtei HaLechem. Says Gemara no mishum neikla mifal because we can refute that because malav lulav it has a stringency over them. Shkein ton abba minim. It needs 4 different species. Place discusses they also need other things, but it has 4 minim. Okay, so that's something that's more unique and more of a stringency than that by Omer Shtei Lechem. Therefore, you couldn't learn out Omer Shtei Lechem from Lulav, and therefore you have to have a separate source by each one of them. Now we go to the next brisa. We said Sukkah v'chol machshir, the Sukkah and all its preparatory acts. Deichem es Shabbos, you could go ahead and build the Sukkah according to Rabbi Eliezer. That's the Rabbi Eliezer according to Rabbi Eliezer on Shabbos. So where does he know that Sukkah machshir na deichem Shabbos? If you think it's from, there's a lot of redundancy, like repetitive, so just you follow along. It flows. It's like waves. If it's me, it's from the Lechem. You can't serve the Bible. You can't learn out from there. That's kachim. That's Hashem's types of things. And if you think you learn that from a mamatzinu, from like we find milula by lulav, where it's a mitzvah, it's not a tzachik gibay, it's just a mitzvah. And we just brought just before that Mashin is Deicha Shabbos. So to Sukkah, it's a mitzvah Mashin should be Deicha Shabbos. You can't turn Abamina. Lulav has a stringency over Sukkah. Lulav is not just one thing. It's lulav, esrog, hadas, aravas. So El Rebbe says the Gemara, Gamar Shivas Yamim mi lulav. You learn now it says Shivas Yamim by Sukkah. It says Shivas Yamim by lulav because both those mitzvahs should be done for 7 days. Malahala Machshiv Dechnes Shabbos, just like over there by lulav. It's preparatory acts of Deicha Shabbos. Also over here, the preparatory acts are Deicha Shabbos. Meaning because we're not learning from what's called a mamatzina. Mamatzina is okay, just like we find, just based on logic. Here it's an actual Gezerah Shava from Shibbos Yom. Now Rashi points out, although wait a second, this is not mufim mishneit stadim. It's not superfluous this word Shibbos Yom from both sides because by lulav there says one time the word Shibbos Yom and we already expanded according to Rabbi Eliezer to exclude night times. So it's not mufna. Well, that says Rashi. It's only mufna on the side of Sukkah. But since Rashi says, since we really said this idea of Hechsher Mitzvah being Deicha Shabbos by Omer and Shtei Lechem and Lulav, so he calls what's called just a Gilui Milsa Ba'alma. It's not really a full-fledged Gezerah Shabbos. It's just like revealing the fact that here it applies here too, which Rashi says it's a little bit difficult this answer, but that's what we're not going to ask and say, wait a second, it's only mufti mitzad echad, not mishneit stadim, how can you learn a Gezerah Shabbos? There's a chomer by Lulav over Sukkah, maybe you can't learn out Sukkah from Lulav, even from a Gezerah Shabbos, because Lulav has Daled Minim. We don't ask the question because we already find this other places too, and therefore even like a lesser of the type of Gezerah Shabbos, we're going to learn it out and say that it's Hechsher Mitzvah's Deicha Shabbos. But now the Gemara asks, again, all of them are going to have the same type of questioning, the Lichter Rechman of a Sukkah. So wait a second, just let the Torah write that the Machshin of Deicha Shabbos by Sukkah, and let's learn that Omer Shtei Lechem and Nigma Menei and learn it out from Sukkah. If Sukkah is not even Tzachik Gevay, it's just Tzachik Mitzvah's Deicha Shabbos, then for sure by Omer Shtei Lechem, says because you could refute and say Mala Sukkah, there's a stringency by Sukkah. Shekain no hegis b'leilas k'biyamim. Sukkah applies even at nighttime in contrast to Omer Shtei Lechem, have to be during the daytime. So therefore you couldn't learn out from there that you have to say a special limud by Omer Shtei Lechem. Next price was matzah. The mitzvah of matzah and all its preparatory acts. Deichem is Shabbos. Rabbi Eliezer holds also override Shabbos. So I would bake matzahs, or you bring it. Let's say you could do a malacha to go ahead and let's say cut the wheat or whatever it is you could do on Pesach for the matzah according to Rabbi Eliezer. Says Gemara, where does he know this from? Again, we go through the same svaros again. It's like chazering and getting one more step. If it's you can learn that from the Omer Shtei Lechem, you can't. That's hektish types of things. If you can learn it from lulav, you can't turn out that needs the 4 species. Sukkah, no, you can't learn from this. You can't hegis b'leilas k'biyamim. Has a tendency that you do it at nighttime and then daytime, whereas matzah is not day and night. It's only the first night that's obligation, not more than that. As the Gemara says, you don't have to eat matzah after the first night. So yeah, although it's at nighttime, as Tais discussed that too, but it's not night and day. It's just the first night. So you're not going to learn it. So how do we know that matzah it's machshir and deicha Shabbos? The Rebbe says the Gemara Gamar Chamisha Asa. We have Gezerah Shabbos. We learn that where it says by matzah the 15th of Nisan. Chamisha Asa and Chag Sukkos where it says by Sukkos also is the 15th of Tishrei. So Malam, just like over there, Machshir, Deicha Shabbos, we said by Sukkah, the preparatory acts of Deicha Shabbos. Akan also over here by Matzah, Machshir, Deicha Shabbos, the preparatory acts are Deicha Shabbos. So now the Gemara says, okay, wait a second. But look to Rachmana, let the Torah have written explicitly. But Matzah, that is Deicha Shabbos, it's Machshir, Menisa Hamach, Benigma Menei, and let all the other ones learn from Matzah. Says Gemara, no, it has its own stringency. Mala Matzah, what you find by Matzah is Shekin Hegis B'Nasham K'B'Nasham. It's a mitzvah asesha as mangarama that applies by women just as much as by men. As the Gemara learns at Pesachim that when Gimel Beis, it says in the same pasuk, Lo yishleichu lav chametz Shabbos yom, not to eat chametz for 7 days, and then it says over there to eat matzah, which teaches us whoever has the prohibition of not eating chametz has the positive commandment of eating matzah. Now women have the negative prohibition of not eating chametz because every negative prohibition women are commanded in, whether it's time bound or not. So therefore they're obligated in matzah too because of the comparison to the pasuk. Now that excludes sukkah and lulav, that women are not obligated in, because the mitzvah says just mangarama. So you would not be able to learn out from matzah, because matzah has its own stringency, therefore you have to say matzah and those other ones. The next price we had quoted was shayfer. We said the blowing of the shayfer, mechamach shiur, in all its preparatory acts. Beichen is the Shabbos, Rabbi Lezer says it overrides Shabbos. Says Gemara, Rabbi Lezer, where does he know this from? Maybe you think it's from Imay Mishtei Alechem. Shekin Tzaref Kavah, you can't learn it from there, Tzaref Kavah. Ime Lulav, if it's from Lulav, you can't, Shekin Dar Nav Aminim, that has the stringency of the Dal Minim. Ime Sukkah, Shekin Negs Blaz Kibiyam, no, it has like my nighttime as a by daytime. Ime Matzah, no, Shekin Negs Blaz Kibiyam, applied by women and by men. So Al Makra, Rabbi says the Gemara, we have a special pasuk for Shayfer from a pasuk about Midbar. It says, Yom Teru Yilachem, a day of blowing should be for you. What's a Yom? By Yom, I feel the Shabbos. Why do you have to say daytime? It's to say daytime even by Shabbos. Now it says the Gemara Ulamai. Now this pasuk that's talking about the blowing of the shofar that's coming to be done on Shabbos. For what's it coming to tell us? If it's telling you that you're allowed to blow on Shabbos, the shofar you don't need it, because even if you were blowing not for the mitzvah of shofar, you just want to blow a trumpet on, you want to blow a shofar on Shabbos. There's no issa deraisa, because Atan de Shmuel, because the Brayso of Shmuel said, and pasuk Bamidbar says, Kamalechas Aveda. Any work of effort, meaning of tircha, that loisasu, that you're not allowed to do on Shabbos. That excludes the blowing of the shofar. V'ridiyas apas and taking bread out of the oven. Shichachma, it's something of wisdom. Fe'in malach, it's not actual work. It's only an uvd in the chayil. It's just a weekday activity. That's why you're not allowed to do it. But that's rabbinic. You don't need a pasuk to permit you to blow the shofar on Shabbos. So what are we learning out from Yom Tru Lechem that even on Shabbos? Rather, obviously, the machshir, and it's coming to include the machshir shayfer. That's what the Yom is coming to tell you, even on Shabbos, that you can do it on Shabbos. Now, it says, and Rabbanan, who they disagree with, they don't allow you to do the hafshir mitzvah of shayfer on Shabbos. Hahu mi bayile. They need bayim to tell you, for the shayfer is blown on Shabbos day, on Yom Tov day, not on Shabbos, on the daytime and not at nighttime. Says Rabbi Eliezer, where does he know that the shayfer is only blown on the daytime, not at nighttime? Nafkele learns it from a different passage in the Yukra that says, Mibayema Kippurim, and it talks about Yovel, there's another time that we blow the shofar. On the Yom Kippur of every 50th year, called the Jubilee year, the Yovel, it says, Taviru shofar b'chol aretzechem, you should pass the shofar, you should blow it in all of your lands. Now, there it says, by Yom, they were learning out that it has to be daytime, not at nighttime. Now, B'garim Na'adadi, we learn out the blowing of the shofar on the 1st of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, from the 10th of Tishrei, which is Yom Kippurim of the Yebel year. The Gemara says Rosh Hashanah Lam Gimel Beis, because why does it have to say B'Chodesh Hashvi? Many times it already tells us Yom Kippurim is B'Chodesh Hashvi in the 7th month. Why does it say the 7th month? So the Gemara with the Masechtas Rosh Hashanah to tell you that all the blowings of the shafaris on the 7th month are all the same. So if the 7th month, that of Yom Kippur, which is the 10th of Tishrei, on Yebel, is going to be blown only during the daytime, not at nighttime, that will tell us automatically that the blowing of the shofar on the 1st of Tishrei, which is Rosh Hashanah, that shofar is also only blowing during the daytime. That is how Rabbi Eliezer knows it's bayayim v'loy balayim. So now the Gemara asked the question we asked by all of them. Okay, so let the Torah have written this, that the machshir mitzvah deicha Shabbos by shofar v'leitz hanach v'lig b'nei, and then we would know oimer shte'elechem learned it out from shofar. So the Gemara, no, there's two shofaris we're talking about over here: blowing the shofar on Rosh Hashanah and blowing the shofar on the Yevil year, and each one of them has a stringency that you wouldn't be able to learn out that the machshir is deicha Shabbos. Mitzkiya shofar the Rosh Hashanah, like the Migmi can learn it from blowing the shofar Rosh Hashanah, because it has a stringency. It brings the recollections, the memories of the Jewish people in front of their Father in heaven as a certain chomer. So therefore, that may be the machshir deicha Shabbos. Who would say all these other mitzvahs machshir deicha Shabbos? And mitzkiya shofar Yom Kippurim, like we can't learn out from the blowing the shofar Yom Kippurim on the Yovel year, which is every 50th year, because that also has a stringency. Lama Malik, the master says, Tiku Bezdin Shofar, when the Bezdin blows the shofar on the Yovel year and Yom Kippurim, Niftru Avodim Libertaim, the slaves are free to go back to their houses. It's a call of dryer, of freedom on Yovel, is dependent on the blowing of the shofar, and besides the Chayzel B'lein, and the fields go back to their owners. So therefore it's significant, that blowing of the shofar, maybe that's why it's Deicha Shabbos. That wouldn't tell us that all the other mitzvahs, the Machshir Deicha is the Shabbos. Now the Daf ends by Amar, going back all the way back to the beginning, which is really where we started from. We said, Mila b'chol machshirah. This was the halacha of our Mishnah, called Rabbi Eliezer de Mila. Mila and all its preparatory acts, Deichan is the Shabbos, override Shabbos, that's the Rabbi Eliezer. That's the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. Says the Gemara, Menoli Rabbi Eliezer ha. Where did Rabbi Eliezer know this? That the hechsher mitzvah of Mila is Deichan Shabbos. Imi kulu gamar. Everything is going to learn from any one of these things, Kamina. Like we said each one of them has a stringency that you can't learn out, which is like we said. You can't learn out from lulav, because there's three other meaning taken along with it. You can't learn that from sukkah, because that applies by day but night. You can't learn from matzah, that's by women as by men. You can't learn from shefer, because that brings the chrenet yisrael b'mishal shemaim. So how do we know that hechsher milah is doich Shabbos? Boy, moreover, says the Gemara, another svar why you can't learn out from it is because malahanach, just like by those things, if you continue to tell the Beis and Aleph, shekenim aver zman batla. If the time for that mitzvah passes, you can't do it anymore. Which is matzah, every one of those mitzvahs, shefer, has to be done on that day. If you wait till the next day, which is not Shabbos anymore, you already lost that mitzvah. In contrast to a milah, if you don't do it on Shabbos, you can do it on Sunday, you do it on Monday. So therefore, those are two questions that you wouldn't be able to learn it out.
Mitzvah bizmano.
But it's not batal. That's all we're saying. He's saying you wouldn't be able to know that the hechsher mitzvah is doicha because those other mitzvahs you could do it. Here, maybe the mitzvah itself you could do, but the hechsher mitzvah you wouldn't know because, okay, fine, you're supposed to do it on Shabbos, but you can't because you didn't prepare the knife. I told you on Friday to prepare the knife. Right? You didn't have it, it's okay, so you can't do it, but you can do it on Sunday. So the Rebbe says, the reason Rebbe is because Amakra, it's a pasuk in the Yikra. It says, on the 8th day, you should circumcise the flesh of his foreskin. Which, what does it mean by Yom? To tell you, Shabbos, even if it's on Shabbos, because as Rashi explains, the milah itself, the circumcision itself, that's Deicha Shabbos. The Gemara is going to tell us later on that that's Halacha Moshe Messinai. So we already know that the milah is Deicha Shabbos. So what is by Yom, which tells you whatever the day is, that it's going to be Deicha Shabbos, is even the Machshir, even the preparatory acts are going to be Deicha Shabbos. Says Gemara, okay, but let's do Rachman b'milah. So then if that's the case, as we're asking along this whole Amid, so then write by Milah that the Hechsher Deicha Shabbos, let's the Hanach V'li B'nei, and then we'll learn out Oimer Shtel Alechem, learn them all out from Milah. So we could refute that because you could say Mala Milah, but we find by circumcision has a Chumrah. There was a covenant of 13 covenants by Bris Milah, as Rashi brings that it says the word Bris by Avram Avinu by Milah 13 times in Bereshit Yud Zayin to tell you that there's 13 brises that are on the Bris Milah, and therefore you would say that it's a very common that it's Hechsher. It's the preparatory acts of the mitzvah of milah, to chop the wood, to make the coals, to make the knife, to go ahead and do the bris milah. That's Deicha Shabbos. But I wouldn't know all the other ones that they're Deicha Shabbos, and therefore we need a special limud for all those brises, all those teachings that those mitzvahs are Deicha Shabbos according to Rabbi Yezer. Some of these we learned about in today's Daf, in Shabbos Daf Kuf Lamed Aleph, was the statement that really the whole Daf was about, that was said, not for everything did Rabbi Yezer say that Hechsher Mitzvah is Deicha Shabbos. Why? He says, I'll prove it to you. Because we find by the Shtei Alechem, which is an obligation of Shavuos, and Rabbi Eliezer did not know that it's Deicha Shabbos, let's say the baking, he only knew it from a Gzeira Shava, from that of the Eimer. So wait a second, why do you need a Gzeira Shava? Obviously because it's not automatic that every Hechsher Mitzvah is Deicha Shabbos. How do we know it? We know because it says Hava by Eimer and Shtei Alechem, that the Hechsher is Deicha Shabbos. Now, the Gemara says that, wait a second, it's only moved the mitzad echad, because you need the pasuk by Shtei Alechem, and there's a flaw. So we should refute it. He says, well, yes, but there's a riboy, there's an extra word taviu, which tells us a special riboy to say that we're going to learn it out, the Shtei Alechem from the Eimer, that the Machshir is Deicha Shabbos, even though you really could ask a question and then say, Eimer has a stringency, where the Ketzira is part of the mitzvah itself, it's not even just a Hechsher Mitzvah. That's a special word taviu to say that we're not going to refute that Gzeira Shabbos. So then we say, okay, you tell me not every Hechsher Mitzvah is Rebbe Lezer holds Deicha Shabbos. What are you coming to exclude? We said, and all these are not being excluded. You're not excluding Lulav because you have by Yoim that tells you even on Shabbos, which is for the Machshir. By Sukkah you learn like Gzeira Shabbos from Lulav. By Matzah you learn out where it says Chamisha Asa from Sukkahs that it's Deicha Shabbos. By Sheif it says Yom Teruah to say even on Shabbos. So which is the mitzvah that you're telling me it's Hechsher Mitzvah not Deicha Shabbos? Says the Gemara, it's by Tzitzis and Mezuzah. And why? Why Tzitzis and Mezuzah different? Because since he can be mafkarid, so you don't have to do it today on Shabbos. Even though, yes, every second is its mitzvah if it's yours, but since you can be mafkarid, it's not going to be your house, it's not going to be your tzitz, your beged, your talis. So therefore, that's not something that would override doing it on Shabbos. Then we said the last Gemara was Milo, and Old Machshina Deicha Shabbos. So we said you can't learn that from all those other ones because, like we said, each one has its own stringency. Like we said, Lulav has a stringency that it requires Dalad Mina. Sukkah has a stringency that it's by nighttime and by daytime. Matzah is a stringency because it applies by women as it is by men. Sheiv has a stringency that of Rosh Hashanah is because it brings the zechreins of the Jewish people to the Bim Shabbat. Then of Yom Kippur, Rabbi Yovel has stringency because the fields go back to their owner and that the slaves go back home. And also you can't learn from all those because by all those, if you miss it, it's going to be batal. Mila, it's not batal. You didn't do it on time, but you could do it the next day and the next day and the next day. So the Gemara concluded, it says, we know it from Ubayem Eshmini, that extra Ubayem Eshmini tells you on the day, whatever the day is, even if it's Shabbos. And now we said you can't learn out all the other ones from Mila, because Mila has its own trinity that has Yud Gimel Brises. It's very chomer, it's 13 covenants, and therefore you needed to learn out its own limudim to tell you that the Hachsha Mitzvah is Deir Shabbat. Think it there anytime. So let's think.